They can be warm for months, then suddenly go distant the moment the connection starts to matter. Not because they stopped feeling, but because now they do. That is the part people misunderstand. The withdrawal often begins at the exact moment love stops feeling casual and starts feeling real. When it is light, they can be playful. When it becomes meaningful, something inside them tightens. They answer slower. Their tone changes. Their body is still there, but their emotional presence starts stepping back inch by inch. And if you are on the receiving end, it feels deeply confusing. Things were getting closer, not worse. The conversations were more honest. The affection felt more natural. The trust was finally starting to build. So why would someone shut down right when the relationship becomes safer? Why go cold when there is finally something real to hold? Because for some people, real love does not only feel beautiful, it also feels dangerous in a way they cannot explain fast enough. Not dangerous like drama, dangerous like exposure. Dangerous like, now you can hurt me in places I usually keep locked. Dangerous like, now your opinion of me can reach parts of me I work hard to protect. That is why the shutdown can look so sudden. But internally it is usually a fast protective response, not a random change of heart. Something gets activated the second closeness stops being abstract. The relationship is no longer just enjoyable. It is now capable of loss. And that changes everything for a guarded person. Once love feels real, disappointment becomes real too. Rejection becomes more expensive. Need becomes harder to hide. The same person who wanted intimacy yesterday may start feeling trapped by it today. Not because intimacy is wrong, but because it wakes up fears they thought they had under control. They may still miss you. They may still want you. They just no longer feel emotionally safe while wanting you. This is one of the most painful contradictions in adult relationships. The deeper the feeling, the stronger the urge to protect against it. So they pull back after a perfect weekend. They go quiet after a vulnerable conversation. They act strange right after calling you special. They become hard to reach right after a moment that should have brought you closer. From the outside, it can look immature or dishonest. Sometimes it is. But often, it is more specific than that. It is a person hitting the edge of what their nervous system knows how to tolerate. A lot of people think fear of love means fear of commitment. Sometimes it does, but often it is fear of emotional consequence. Commitment is not always the scariest part. Being truly seen is. Because once someone sees the real version of you, two old fears wake up at the same time. What if they leave? And what if they stay close enough for me to need them? That second fear gets less attention, but it matters just as much. Some people are not only afraid of heartbreak, they are afraid of dependency, afraid of becoming emotionally shaped by someone else's presence. They may want closeness badly, but the second they feel themselves detaching, they start pulling away to restore a sense of control. Distance becomes the quickest way to calm what closeness stirred up. This is why they can look stable when they care less. When the bond is shallow, they feel free. When the bond deepens, they start feeling vulnerable in ways that seem almost physical. Their chest tightens. Their thoughts get louder. They replay conversations. They notice every shift in tone. They feel exposed by how much your warmth now matters. And instead of saying that, they get practical, or tired, or unavailable. They suddenly need more space. They become less expressive right after becoming more attached. Not because the feeling disappeared, because it became harder to manage. People who shut down when love feels real are often not empty. They are often overwhelmed. Overwhelmed by tenderness. Overwhelmed by the fact that someone is reaching places they usually guard. Overwhelmed by how quickly a good thing can start feeling like a risk. That is why their coldness can appear right after connection, not before it. The trigger is often not conflict. It is closeness. A soft look that lingers too long. A quiet night that feels emotionally intimate. A sentence like, "I feel safe with you." To one person, those moments feel healing. To another, they feel like the point of no return. Because once the connection becomes real, it creates stakes. And some people were never taught how to stay open when the stakes are emotional. Maybe they grew up around love that was inconsistent. Care was there, but not in a way that felt steady. Maybe affection came with mood swings, withdrawal, criticism, or emotional unpredictability. So now, closeness carries a shadow. Even good love can stir old alarm. Their body does not only register connection. It registers the possibility of being undone by it. That history matters, not as an excuse but as an explanation. A person can deeply want secure love, and still not know how to remain emotionally available inside it. Desire and capacity are not always the same thing. That is where a lot of heartbreak lives, in the gap between what someone feels and what they can tolerate. They may genuinely care about you. They may even imagine a future with you. But when the relationship starts asking for emotional steadiness, their old survival habits come online. Suddenly, shutting down feels easier than staying open. You can see it in the smallest moments. You tell them you really miss them, and they respond with humor. You thank them for being important to you, and they change the subject. You share something raw, and their face goes still. Or they do something even more confusing. They become extra affectionate for a moment, then disappear emotionally right after. That push and pull is not always manipulation. Sometimes it is emotional whiplash inside a person who wants closeness but does not know how to hold it. They lean in when they feel longing. They shut down when the longing starts requiring trust. They crave the warmth. They panic at the reliance. So they create little pockets of distance, a slower reply, a flatter tone, a vague excuse. Nothing dramatic enough to name, just enough space to feel less emotionally exposed. That is what makes this pattern so hard to talk about. It often hides inside ordinary behavior. They are busy. They are stressed. They are bad at texting. They have a lot going on. Sometimes that is true, but sometimes those explanations are covering a quieter reality. Love has started reaching them, and they do not know how to stay relaxed while being reached, so they retreat into function. They talk about work instead of feelings. They offer plans instead of presence. They stay physically near, but emotionally dim. They become harder to feel even when they are technically still there. And if you are sensitive, you notice immediately. You feel the loss before anything has officially happened. You hear it in their voice. You feel it in how quickly warmth turns into distance. Then your own fear gets activated. Now one person is shutting down, and the other is trying to make sense of the shift. That is how painful cycles begin. One person retreats to feel safe. The other reaches harder because the retreat feels like danger. The more one pursues clarity, the more the other feels pressured. The more one withdraws, the more the other starts spiraling. Soon both people feel misunderstood. One feels crowded, and the other feels abandoned. But underneath the whole thing is the same problem. Love has become real enough to matter, and neither person feels fully safe inside what that awakens. This is why shutting down is not always about lack of love. Sometimes it is what happens when love collides with old self-protection. A person may deeply value you and still become colder as the bond strengthens. They may not even understand why they are doing it. They just know that something inside them starts bracing. They feel more careful, more self-conscious, more mentally noisy. The relationship stops feeling easy, not because you did something wrong, but because their emotional investment crossed a threshold. Now they are no longer just enjoying you, they are attached to you. And attachment has weight. It introduces uncertainty, hope, dependence, and the possibility of being changed. For a defended person, being changed by love can feel like losing control of the self. That is why they may become less expressive exactly when they care more. They are trying to reduce the emotional volume. They are trying to need less before the need gets too visible. That is also why some people seem calm during casual dating and then shut down in committed love. Casual connection lets them stay partially protected. Real love asks for emotional continuity. It asks them to remain present after the exciting part, after the chemistry, after the chase, after the fantasy. And that is where old fears become unmistakable, because real love is not just being wanted. It is being known over time. It is being impacted by another person over time. It is letting someone matter on ordinary Tuesdays. It is staying soft after the moment gets less glamorous. For some people, that kind of steady intimacy feels harder than any dramatic romance. Drama is intense, but it is familiar. Steady closeness is quieter. It leaves fewer distractions between you and your actual feelings. And when there are fewer distractions, the self becomes easier to hear. So does fear. That fear can sound like many things. What if I disappoint them? What if they see more of me and change their mind? What if I need them more than they need me? What if this becomes serious enough to break me if it ends? What if I cannot stay the version of myself they currently love? Those thoughts are rarely spoken out loud. They are often disguised as fatigue, irritability, emotional flatness, or mixed signals. The person may even start convincing themselves the connection is wrong, not because it is wrong, but because distance feels relieving. Relief can be deceptive. Pulling away lowers vulnerability fast, so the nervous system reads it like proof. See, this feels better? Maybe I was never that into it. But feeling less activated is not the same as feeling less attached. Sometimes it just means the person has moved back into emotional armor. That armor can look mature from a distance. It can sound rational and self-possessed. It says things like, I just need to focus on myself, or I do not want to force anything. And sometimes those statements are true, but sometimes they are polished versions of a more hidden sentence. This has started to matter too much, and I do not know how to stay open without feeling exposed. That sentence is harder to admit, especially if the person has built an identity around being independent, level-headed, or low maintenance. Admitting emotional impact would threaten the self-image that keeps them feeling safe. So they stay composed. They call the shutdown clarity. Meanwhile, the real story is happening underneath. They are not calm because they feel nothing. They are calm because they are suppressing everything that now feels too alive. That is not emotional freedom. It is emotional management. And it has a cost. The cost is intimacy. Because you cannot receive the depth of love while numbing the depth of your response to it. You cannot be fully met while hiding the part of you that needs meeting. That is why some people keep losing relationships they secretly wanted to keep. They pull away at the moment the connection asks for a more honest self. They miss the person afterward. They replay the tenderness afterward. They wonder why they only understand their feelings once the distance is already in place. That happens because distance feels safer, and safety makes buried longing easier to hear. Up close, the fear is louder. Far away, the love is easier to admit. This is one of the saddest patterns in relationships. Missing someone more clearly than you could love them in real time. Not because the love was fake, but because vulnerability was overwhelming. The shutdown protected the person from immediate exposure, but it also cut them off from the connection they actually wanted. And if this pattern is yours, the goal is not to shame it. Shame only drives it deeper underground. The real work is learning to see the moment before the shutdown fully takes over. The moment when closeness turns into tension. The moment when a sweet night suddenly leaves you strangely cold the next morning. The moment when being cared for starts making you want to disappear. That is the doorway. If you can notice it, you can name it. Maybe not perfectly, maybe not gracefully, but enough to stop turning every surge of vulnerability into a silent exit. Enough to say, this matters to me, and that is making me pull back. That sentence alone can change a relationship. Not because it solves everything, but because it replaces confusion with truth. And if you are loving someone like this, clarity matters just as much. Their shutdown does not automatically mean they do not care. But care is not the only thing that matters. Capacity matters too. A person can feel deeply and still make you feel alone if they disappear every time intimacy deepens. Understanding their fears should not require abandoning your own needs. Compassion is important, so are standards. You can have empathy for someone's self-protection and still be honest about its impact. Repeated shutdowns create real loneliness, even when they come from fear instead of malice. That is a difficult balance, to see the wound without romanticizing the pattern. To understand that the coldness may be defensive, while also admitting that defensive coldness still hurts. Love cannot grow where every deepening is treated like a threat. Eventually, something has to become more honest. Either the person learns to stay present through the discomfort of being loved, or the relationship keeps orbiting the same unfinished edge. Because real love does not only ask, do you feel something? It asks, can you remain emotionally available when what you feel becomes real? Can you stay when tenderness makes you self-conscious? Can you speak before distance becomes your only language? Can you let another person matter without punishing the relationship for it? Can you tell the truth before your silence starts telling a colder story? That is what maturity looks like here. Not never feeling afraid. Not being effortlessly secure. Not always knowing what to do with your heart. Maturity is noticing when love awakens old defenses and choosing honesty faster than disappearance. It is learning that exposure is not the same as danger. It is letting care feel destabilizing without immediately shutting the door. It is staying long enough to discover that being affected is not the same as being controlled. And maybe that is the deepest truth under all of this. Some people shut down when love feels real because real love reaches the exact places they once had to survive alone. It touches the part that fears needing, the part that expects loss, the part that learned to stay composed instead of staying open. So the withdrawal is not random. It is a reflex from an older emotional world, a world where closeness did not always feel safe enough to trust. But adult love keeps offering a different possibility, not perfect safety, but honest connection. Not the promise that you will never be hurt, but the chance to stop protecting yourself so completely that love cannot enter. That is the real risk. Not caring too much, not feeling too deeply. The real risk is shutting down so quickly that no one ever gets to love the part of you that was finally becoming real. And no one, including you, should have to lose that part just to feel safe.